Welcome, welcome as everybody logs into our webinar tonight with MedMasters. We appreciate you being here and being open to our suggestions for conversation and topics and helping you guys build great integrative, regenerative, longevity, functional medicine practices. So as mentioned on our last webinar, we have our guest Norm Westervelt with us. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But as everybody's logging in, I wanted to go through some initial announcements, and that way, whatever happens at the end of this party will not be devoid of those pertinent announcements and agenda. So we are recording this, so if you're here and you can't write everything down or remember everything, we definitely will record this and send this out to you probably in the next 48 hours or so. All of our previously recorded webinars are on our YouTube channel, so you just go to MedMasters. There's a couple MedMasters, so you'll see our logo, the book with the blue stars at the top of it, and you can go back and rewatch any of our webinars there, including this one, in the next 48 hours or so. We encourage you always to put your comments in the chat feature. We do not open this up for the verbal communication, just to keep it really organized and clean for the audio. But definitely as we go through our conversation and you have any specific questions for Norm or the topics at hand, or anything else for that matter, this is your time and place to definitely reach out. So use that chat feature. Vicky's on with us, as you know, to keep all that organized, and she's going to share any links or websites, etc., that we might bring up or talk about. And so follow the chat for that reason too. All those resources will be to you there. All right. Do we have very many people on? Hey, Talon, Lexi, Dan, the most important people for the conversation, of course. All right. First of all, I wanted to just make mention of Florida, North Carolina, and many of you may not know that Wyoming is also on fire, and nobody's talking about that, but under kind of some grave conditions. We have lots of clients in those states. We have lots of hope and prayer for those people affected there. I know we'll have people logged on. I've heard from a lot of people that if they've got power, if they've got resources, they would even still be here tonight. But being mindful of others in the situation, and grateful that we are not some of those people. But it is interesting how I also wanted to bring up that this may be affecting all of us. Maybe some of you have heard this, or it's become prevalent in your focus, that apparently one of the largest distributors of IV saline and sterile water is in South Carolina. And so because due to the disaster, and because their main thoroughfare has been damaged so much, they are unable to get supplies in and out of that distribution center. And it's widely affected the distribution of saline and sterile water. So we're already hearing that many of our clients, they're rationing what we have from other distributors for hospitals primarily. And so if you have not heard about this or haven't been, haven't tried to order anything lately, I just want to bring it up. And you probably want to start reaching out to your resources, whatever companies you order from, see if you can't get what you can get right now. We are also helping to work on additional resources. We've got some people in high places, maybe outside the country, etc. Obviously, we don't know how long this might last, but where everything we do is around an IV bag, it might create a bit of a pinch. So again, I would get your people on calling your companies, seeing what you can order and stock up for now, because never know even what might hit Florida, and so on and so forth, what we might be limited to getting. So, and then if we do come up with any additional resources, any particular company, et cetera, that might be able to distribute more loosely to the private practices, we'll definitely send you an email on that. Next, I just want to make a plug for a couple of meetings next week. So next Wednesday, we'll have another webinar, and this is going to be a completely different topic. So wanted to, again, put a plug in there for, you're going to get an email, a couple of emails, solicitations on something to the effect of shiny gadgets, implying non-invasive add-on services for your IV room. So I'm going to specifically be talking about PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency devices, and laser devices, and how this can help cellular medicine and improve the efficacy and therefore the outcome of IV therapy. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, I decided, and even bring in some spreadsheets, look at cost analysis, look at treatment plan analysis, and then also the outcome when you do stack therapies, not just stacking IV therapies like methylene blue and procaine and ozone, but when you bring in those other services as well. And we had a coaching client just yesterday reach out and talk about, just shared an experience of where he was about to let go of his IV room. He just didn't feel like the service itself was sustainable based on the cost, based on the staffing that it was taking and so forth. But when he started to stack other therapies with it and incorporate other services from his office, it's now one of his main profit centers, if not the profit center. So we'll be talking along those lines on Wednesday. And then on Friday the 18th, I'll be speaking with American IV Association, and I'm speaking on the same old thing, ozone and photodynamic therapy. So most of you probably have heard that presentation. You're always welcome to be there. But I want to further invite you to come attend because the American IV Association is solely focused on the legality and regulatory side of IV therapy. So I really feel like there's probably going to be a lot of really good information for you there. It's a recorded virtual webinar. It's 9 to 12 on a Friday, so you may or may not be able to attend, but I would register. It's free, and then you can get those recordings and that information. But they're going to be, I think it's going to be a huge resource. Just what's up and coming, pharmacy regulation, IV regulation, state by state things. That's their focus. And so it's a totally different spin on IV rooms. So again, want to invite you to that. Vicky's going to share those links or has shared those links so you can register for the webinar Wednesday, and then also with American IV Association. This is a free thing for them. They do have memberships, et cetera, that you can be part of. And again, they don't get into the medical side. It's all the compliance and regulatory side. But I think that offers a great service for our industry. All right, Norm Westervelt. We're so excited to have Norm for multiple reasons. I really feel honored. He's been a mentor of mine. It's like many of you know this, Lexi. It reminds me of you so much, where you bring on podcast guests and et cetera, that you're like, this is a mentor. It's kind of a interesting dynamic when you feel like you've reached that level that somebody you look up to would be on your presentations. But our relationship goes back quite a bit. I think the pertinent details here go back, I think 12, 15 years. He was first a patient / client of a private practice that I was working in, and kind of an optimization type client. And after the relationship grew, we became a client / patient of his business. Extensive history in finance. Everything about that, growing businesses, has been an entrepreneur for decades. And at times was at the forefront of being a mentor to me. And I think always in the background, just always felt encouraged and had that support. If I needed it or did reach out, there was always words of wisdom there for growing, developing, I think personally, and also in business. So, as we continue these conversations even more often now, as we've gotten into MedMasters, I feel like that conversation should be passed on to you guys as entrepreneurs, because what good does it do to keep the great advice and experience to myself? So welcome, Norm, and appreciate you being here for sure.
Thank you.
And if you would like to elaborate or expand on my version of your resume, then I invite you to do so.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It's truly my honor. And what's noteworthy about the last 15 years is we don't talk every day. We don't even talk every month. But whether it's 6 months or 8 months, each time we connect, it's feels like we picked up right where we left off. So it's this. I've really enjoyed this relationship with you, Kim, because it's efficient. It's we get on our calls, get right to the point, create strategy. And so I've been very, very grateful for that. And then secondly, too, um, I am a student of my body, my health and fitness. I feel like I'm only at a half shelf life right now. 62 years old. I'm going to live another 60 years at least, and you are instrumental in getting me started on that because you cannot take a casual interest in yourself. Like if you're committed to it, you got to do the research, you got to do the work, you got to understand it, and you have to come to people that can give you guidance and good expertise. So thank you for helping me in the early part of my journey, and so now it's fun to share hacks back and forth, that we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I have yet to really dive into that effectively in the last few conversations we've had. I'm super curious where you're at with some of those things. Um, because yeah, you don't look or act or live like you're 62. So another way that I would like to be a student of yours. But it also is why I think you're so valuable to our audience and to this group, is because you do recognize their work in their respective scope, as well as the fact that most of you are probably entrepreneurs, and many of you maybe didn't get into medicine thinking you would go down this road. And I know all of you have discovered that it's not the easiest road, that you have your challenges, and that different phases, different, again, economics, politics, all natural disasters, they all play a role repeatedly and cyclically with how we conduct business. We've had one of the things I love about you, you're very successful, but also very willing to say, I failed at this, I learned from this. And so we all should do the same, and then, learn and grow from that. So it's a great introduction to let you guys know, again, the history of entrepreneurship, of growth, of business, finance, but he does really support what you do as entrepreneurs. So getting into the conversation, Norm, and I would love to hear from anybody listening, again, what are your top concerns as a business owner? Let's talk about this. As I have asked this question to Norm, what are you seeing in your audience or in your clients or in your marketing? What trends are you looking for or noticing? What are your clients telling you? But Norm, first, maybe give just a little bit, expand a little bit on your business model and how, and I know you've got several of them, but maybe just a generalization of uh, maybe your client flow or acquisition and some of those, the thing with entrepreneurship is there's certain levels of business or areas of business that are just consistent throughout any industry.
Mhm.
So as you connect those with your specific business, just to give an idea of your model and how that might correlate with the medical model.
Yeah, and because the context is very important, based on things that I'll be sharing a little later on. I do personal financial education for entrepreneurs. So every entrepreneur out there has a different journey and a different story about how they got here. But once they found their passion, they white knuckled that, and they, everybody on this webinar today remembers, and maybe you're doing it now, those 20-hour days, and working on the product, and then working on the checkbook, and then somebody comes in and quits, and then you're doing that job for that day. We've all been there. We've all been through that. So I discovered that with these small business owners, in typically I'm working with business owners where their business revenue is between $1 and $5 million. Their personal income, may be between 250 and $1 million. And they have done an outstanding job building their business. I mean, I really tip my hat to them because they worked hard. But knowing they work that hard, I can almost guarantee that they have not spent the same amount of attention on 5 areas: cash flow, taxes, insurance, investing, and estate planning. It's almost impossible because we all fall into the same trap. We get focused on the business, and then the things that are really important, we ignore. So I know that every small entrepreneur is in that space, but the challenge is with those 5 areas, any one of those can undo, even though it's on the personal finance side, any one of those can undo 20 or 30 years worth of work overnight. If through, if you don't have the right insurances, or you don't have the right protection, in your corporate structure and things of that nature. So I learned the hard ways. So I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. What has served me well is I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and an MBA in corporate finance, but I never went and worked for a corporation. I took that education and applied it to my business. So every business I've ever had, I personally do the books. It's just the way I'm wired. It's what's important to me, because that can get away from you quicker than anything else, especially if you put somebody in charge of it. So I have just learned over the years that there are pitfalls, and it's not a direct path. It's very much things are up, things are down, very much a zigzag process for all of us as small business owners. So I, after having all these businesses, I suddenly realized, and I felt passionate and called to each and everything I've ever done. But I realized several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, the reason I was given all those businesses by the universe, and the reason there are so many scars on my back, is because I'm actually called to help small business owners avoid those pitfalls. So that's just a brief summary of how I got here in my why. And you're right, I do other things, but Wealth Factory is the mothership. That's the core business. That's what allows me to express my passion to my clients.
So that was great. Next steps are like, so if you're your own business and you help entrepreneurs, how do you find those entrepreneurs? How do you coach them? Do you have automated systems? How do you do the education part? Because I do think there's a lot of parallel here, a lot of, especially for a lot of the particular people on right now, is they are looking at expanding to some degree their medical knowledge into, and we all, I mean, that's what, we're just all teachers. We're all sharing information in the medical space, right? So how do you, and even like they're trying to find patients, they're trying to engage patients, charge patients, coach patients. So is that how you do your business towards entrepreneurs?
Yes. I find my potential clients three different ways. I either find them online, and I spend a lot of money fearlessly on ad spend every year. They come through speaking events because, as you know, there's nothing like a live audience and the people that you meet there, and through relationships. Like very similar to a relationship with MedMasters. You very graciously have given me a spot on your website, and I hold that sacred. That's very important to me. But through those three areas, people come and find me, and I sift through those to find a qualified lead, an individual that actually fits the profile, that 1 to 5 million in business revenue, maybe 250 to 1 million in personal income. And then I simply invite them to have a conversation with me. Now, anybody that is already following Wealth Factory knows that we put a lot of information out there, and we give a lot of opportunity for people to schedule, and we could commit one webinar and then some to marketing, concepts and ideas. But I've been very, very successful getting individuals to raise their hand and schedule to talk with my team, primarily based on some kind of value that I've given them. Maybe a white paper, a strategy, something tangible like a download that makes them go, I want to go into a deeper conversation here. And then the second thing that I did is my main program is called Wealth Architecture, and that is the deliverables on that is delivered 5 different ways: written material through a textbook, a online dashboard which has all the content, weekly webinars, just like MedMasters does, community, and then one-on-one live coaching. So anybody that wants to participate in that program, they are getting the benefit of all that. It frankly is overwhelming information. So we really have to kind of drip how we go about educating these individuals, but we primarily start with pain points. So of the list that I gave you, most often people are coming to me because of tax concerns. So if that's their main issue, that's where we start. A lot of them come over concerns related to legacy in estate planning. It's shocking how many people actually, and I can almost guarantee some on this call do not have an estate plan. And because it's just, and it's nobody's fault. It's just the thing that we always push off to the side. So once we find out what the most important thing is for the client, that's where we start. And I have clients in every state of the country. So thank you for your words, related to the folks out east. And I'm a part of that too. I have another home where my grandchildren are at, and that's in Alabama. And so we're watching everything very, very closely right now as well. But sometimes we'll meet an individual where my upper level program isn't perfect for them, and we simply have a much less expensive program that actually has several hundred people in it. And we simply offer a webinar once a month with tips that are very similar to some of the things that we'll be sharing today. So it is a real live community with my clients in all across this country.
Oh, okay. I gotta organize my thoughts so this maybe goes in the right progression. One of my recent questions to you was, how important is social media online presence for lead gen and marketing? And your answer to me was basically it's critical. They're like, if you think that your avatar, your client, your patient is not somewhere in the socials, you're being really naive. So just want to put that out there, but not go down that road just now. One of the really important things that you steered in my career was the importance of figuring out your foundation, like your core values, your mission. What is your avatar? What does that look like? I attended courses with businesses you've been part of and leveraged to create Wealth Factory, where we went through classroom time to establish this foundation. And so my first question, 1A to your comments just now, is how important is that when you're looking at who am I? Who am I talking to? What am I marketing? What are my 3 buckets of lead generation? And then the second 1B to that question is, have you had to adjust that based on the current political, economic situation in the country, or based on consumer habits or viewer habits?
Yes and yes. So my Norm Westervelt has always been Norm Westervelt, but core values actually do need to be revisited and adjusted from time to time because we get mature, we grow, other people have influences in our lives. My core values are simplicity, structure, and service. In any new relationship that I meet, whether it's in business or somebody that, maybe wants to work here, or even if I'm on the phone with a client or a potential client, they know early on that's how I'm wired: simplicity, structure, and service. And in the backstory on that is I am done creating complication in my life. I look back at all the time, energy, and money that was wasted because I went running into something too quickly and it was chaos, and it didn't serve me well. So anytime I work, whether it's a marketing project or whether it's somebody coming wanting a relationship with Wealth Factory, if it's not simple or doesn't feel simple, I just won't do the deal. And I don't care how many zeros are behind it because it never comes back. Secondly, in structure, now fortunately, I am a bullet point person. I like outlines, I like lists. And so structure has always served me well. It was my immaturity that actually made me violate my structure principle. But the most important one, and this is why I love your clientele, the most important one is service. So how do I serve the key relationships in my life at a higher level, even beyond personal finance? And that particular dynamic um, actually probably got accelerated about 10 years ago with grandfatherhood. So
Mm.
when I started becoming a grandfather, I was taking principles that was influencing these young children, and I'm like, why can I not bring that into my business? Which is showing love and showing compassion and showing care. So I love my clients, and just the other side of the door of the room I'm sitting on is a wonderful team of people that I love, and I hire for that. And I really feel like, because this business has been a gift to me, that that's how I serve them. Now, granted, I can be a little philosophical based on the learning curve, but if I had had a mentor that taught me how to do these things 30 years ago, my journey maybe would have the same amount of success, but I would have been so much happier. So having core values that are in alignment with your business. So, well, Factory's core values are slightly different, but they are a reflection of mine. the entrepreneurs that are on this call, if you have not done a really good core value exercise, it's worthy of it. And part B is where the core values come in is when, like, when things are going great, like, nobody's complaining, everybody's upbeat and helpful. But for my particular clients that are affected by inflation, interest rates, and an election that is very confusing to all of us, and then stack on top of that fake news, artificial intelligence, it is creating a polarization for these entrepreneurs that, like, I've never seen before. And in um 22 2022 and 2023, we're great. I don't know, but it's almost like a switch was flipped January 1st, 2024, as in coincidentally that coincided with pandemic related money drying up. There was just a completely different mindset. And I think in my mind, it started when the holidays were not as robust as everybody forecasted. So that kind of set the tone going into this year. So what I wasn't prepared for, and I'm not a super big fan of a lot of self-help in financial curriculum, but it occurred to me this year in the marketing that, especially after we went through so many outstanding close calls where the client didn't close. And because I'm not ever going to proclaim to have the cheapest program in the world, but I would talk with these individuals, and my team would talk with these individuals. They had plenty of cash, but they were scared to give it up because already as early as the first quarter, like, people were getting, some of these business owners were getting their line of credits, clipped. And so they started worrying about, where's cash going to come from? And then, to kind of put the icing on the cake, the Fed in interest rate hikes. When is it going to stop? It was and so I come at it from a little different standpoint, where I need to address the concerns that these small business owners have, but also too, I have been through this at least 4 other times, maybe 5, because our economy in America, about every 10 years, there is a major reset. It may not always be real estate. It may not always be the financial institutions. It may not always be, the .coms or online, but these major corrections take place, and everybody gets fuzzed up. They get polarized. So I was unprepared, but needed to start to change a lot of my narrative this year, reaching out to people about mindset, about courage, about simplifying things, about having more structure. And that message resonated a whole lot more than me going, I bet you have a tax problem. I need to help you. Like, suddenly taxes was the least of these people's concern. So this has been a very, very interesting year from that standpoint. But a lot of my messaging has been, look, you're good at what you do. Stay calm. And I can tell you, it's going to happen again. Every 10 years or so, these cycles happen. And so just be calm, keep your head, and we'll get through this together.
Man, that's major insight, I think, just in taking a passion or a topic or a niche that your business is in and transitioning the language, the communication of it to how your demographic, your avatar, how the community, how the public is perceiving life in the moment. I think we all could transition medicine talk into a mindset perspective and maybe see a change in that result. So have you seen a lot of entrepreneurs of any type, right? Because you have entrepreneurs from all sorts of industries. Like the main common denominator here is you own a company. But do you see a lot of people when things get uncertain, they just go into chaos mode? They just, I mean, you mentioned in one respect, they stop spending money even if they have it. But I could sense that other entrepreneurs might start spending on all sorts of ancillary things or things that they think are going to, they got to diversify. They got to bring on something new. They got to create a new product because who knows what's coming. I mean, it sounds like that's a pretty typical response when you own a business and
And I,
uncertain.
yeah, and I refer to that as the shiny penny or the lottery effect. That you're right. They maybe see a little downturn, in their core product, what they're best at. And so they rush out there and add this in or add that in and don't measure the costs associated to that, and also to especially the stress that that puts on the team. In the emails that you sent out preparing for this webinar, you used the word resilience in one of the sentences. That is a very, very important word for 2024 and for 2025. And I put that in the context of the team. The team has to be resilient, because they, we hire smart people. They know what's going on out there with the economy. They see big companies laying people off every day. They are confused about the reports, and even confused about the stock market, up and down. And so a lot of what I do with this fine group that I work with here is I be as transparent as I can possibly be. We talk about the numbers, we talk about changes in the business model, because if I don't have their buy-in,
Mm.
it's not going to work at any level. The clients can smell it a mile away. So this year, I've spent way more time explaining to the team small changes and major changes, because I can't do this without them. So I've got probably 25 W-2s and a handful of contractors. I have nothing to do with the success of this company. Everybody outside this door does. And so and so what happens is with these small business owners is they'll, when they go into panic mode, they try and add these things, get the team to implement them, and then the team doesn't understand why, and then they hate it. And my line of thinking is stay in your lane. There is one or two things that you're very, very good at. And it's fine to expand when the time is right, but expanding with new product lines in uncertain times can get very, very challenging. The things to double down on in my mind, and I've done this, are things like marketing. But so like when cash gets tight, like I talk with a lot of my clients and they cut marketing back, and I'm like, that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing right now. and
In
and so,
fact, sorry to interrupt you. One of the conversations we had, you said that you are doing okay. You're still getting closure but it's taking like 40% more effort or budget to get that same degree of closure. So cutting back would only cut back on your success in theory and diminish your returns. Whereas in some of these situations, it would just be best to at least stay the course with your budget, if not maybe increase.
Yes, yes. And 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 that needs to be thoughtful and strategic. So so for anybody here that maybe sees my post on LinkedIn or a Wealth Factory post on Instagram or something, there is a lot of smart people behind all that. It's not random, at any level. And so aligning your message to the right audience with the right message is key, because you can be just throwing your money away.
Yeah.
Um, so so what I use this year for, because my numbers are down because the concerns that these entrepreneurs have. And I just made the commitment, and fortunately, I understand my margins and I understand when there's a decrease, and I would encourage anybody on this call too, whatever product, you're doing, if you don't have an accountant that can actually boil down the cost accounting part of that so that labor, materials for every IV you do, whatever that is, what you're making on that. I would encourage you highly to understand those numbers. But with my accounting background, I understood those numbers very, very well. And I just decided that I am not I'm not gonna release anybody. I love this team. This team got me here. We'll weather the storm this year. And when everything comes back, like I believe it will later in 2025, I've got everybody here ready to go. But that process started several years ago by hiring the right people. And so, there's when you're trying to safeguard your business, it's not only what you do going forward, but it has so much to do with what you've already done in addressing that.
Interesting long-term perspective and the short-term choices. Um, because the challenges will come, as you said, at least every 10 years, right? We're going to be faced with something that's going to question our financial health, I guess, so to speak, and who you have
Yeah.
around you is going to make a
Well,
huge difference.
and that's predictable. History tells us that. But then, as small business owners, there's the black swan events, that just come out of nowhere. And, and just like your industry, I'm subject to certain regulatory, things, and that phone can ring anytime,
Mm.
and actually it's, as some people on, here probably know, it's not really negotiable. Like when regulatory comes knocking, you do it their way, you cooperate, but that may be disruptive, to what's actually happening in the business. So in addition to world issues, we've got these things, and that's where, one of the things that I've adapted is I have always been a plan B person. So I have always been, and this may be a curse, but I've always been haunted by anything that's working great. What happens when it's not? And what's my plan B? So this year, that particular principle has served me well, because I had to make a couple major pivots, based on what I see coming in the economy, but it wasn't a heavy lift because it was something that I had started to prepare for, a couple years ago.
I see. Plan B. I would like to know from people listening, like make some comments, even just yes or no. Like, have you seen these same trends in your patients' spending habits? Maybe it seems or feels like they do have the finances and the resources, they do even have the desire, but they're not raising their hand, they're not engaging. Have you seen a decline in, let's say, patient spending for all intents and purposes in our industry, they're cash services, right? They're at some degree elective services. That while health is so important in order to outlast any of these other difficulties, people will choose to put on the back burner if they feel like that dollar is maybe going to be necessary somewhere else. So I'd like to hear if you guys are seeing this already. I felt like talking to Norm. He's so acutely connected to these trends, polling and surveying his clients on spending habits and justifications and kind of seeing this ahead of time. But wondered if it was something we're seeing out in private practice too. So what is your advice to weather this storm or weather any storm? We got plan B, we've got have a good team, we've got get your ducks in a row in terms of alignment with your core values, knowing your audience and your avatar, keeping your marketing budget where it should with a lot of educated decisions there. Um, are are you somebody who would suggest or how would you suggest saving, and how would you suggest spending, whether it be whatever the resource, time, money, education, fortifying a current product, or what would your recommendations be?
The one of the things that I do, and I'm not completely familiar with the patient model here, but I suspect there is the need is presented in some kind of care plan is presented to the patient. And
What we're
the
hoping for. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're
yeah,
working towards.
well, I one of the most important meetings I have during the week is I want to see every person that we presented our program to that didn't take advantage of it and why. Like I understand, like anybody that did not buy the program last week, I know if it was a cash issue, or I know if it was maybe a significant other, wasn't supporting it. And also to anybody that discontinues the program, I go over that report too, and I understand exactly why.
Can I
And
stop you for 1 second?
yes,
And just connect this, because I don't know if everybody's gonna catch it. You asked, are we doing treatment plans? I'm like, geez, hopefully so. And you're like, I have a plan that I sell. I have a program. I mean, to me, that says you're not saying, hey, we've got this, we've got that, you could do this, you could do that. We've got all sorts of skill sets, we treat all sorts of conditions, we can manage any type of income. I don't get the sense that that is your team's presentation of your program. So just kind of, again, drawing the connection there, that it does, I think, make a lot of sense. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge believer in treatment plans. For one, because that's going to get you the best outcome. Two, because that is the easiest, best way for a patient or a person to engage. Like, what am I looking at? What am I purchasing for what price? What does that schedule look like? And when you've got that plan to offer somebody and you do that offering well, then you could get to the assessment of why somebody discontinued, why somebody engaged, didn't engage, and go down that road. Am I accurate with that?
you are, Kim. And I, I mentioned early, stay in my lane. The presentation is very succinct. So there's a million ways that we could present our product here, but we're simply saying that message that I shared earlier. here's the 5 things that I can guarantee you don't have buttoned up. We're here to help you do that. And we have the resources from the team and outside professionals that can help you do that. And, and the fact of the matter is, once they join the program, that's when we allow it to maybe take a different path. But in the messaging, and by the way, too, that was the origin of my cheaper program, because like some people would come in tears and go, I don't want to stop, but I have to because of my business downturn. And we're like, hey, that's fine. We've got a program, that is half the cost of the regular program. We would invite you to be a part of that. And then when you're ready, to upgrade back up, you can do that.
So they led me in two directions. One, again, what would you recommend, or where would you spend your resources right now in light of what you know for spending habits, for economy, for your, even not that you have to get into them, but your predictions in terms of stock, etc. And then two, share with the audience a little bit about those 5 things. Like, I feel like they definitely want to learn more about those 5 things and how they would impact their business. Why would they want to get involved? Your program or not? Why is that relevant to them?
Well, first of all, these 5 areas are relevant to all of us, whether you're a W-2 earner or a business owner. And I actually have a fair amount of high earning W-2 people that are clients, but they have an appetite for entrepreneurism. They're just trying to figure out how to get there, starting with cash. So, as the saying goes, cash is king. And there is nothing worse than being in a situation either where you're ready to grow or you have to mount a defense for something like a downturn in patients. If you don't have the cash readily available, then it's a challenge. And so it's very difficult to go out there, like even I have some clients that not only, they would like to go get a line of credit, but they should have done that a year ago, because there's no way they're going to get it now. And even if they did, 8 or 9%, it just isn't feasible at all. So understanding your cash flow and protecting that cash is very, very important. So these clients that say, I don't want to join your program because I don't want to give up my cash, I actually don't blame them. Like, I'm totally cool with that. I understand it. Having a safe place for that cash is the second part of it. And we have strategies around protecting your cash and having it available, just tools that can be available to any entrepreneur out there. Then next is asset protection. So asset protection is kind of, lumped in with estate planning, but it's very, very much a part of, trust, like actually trust that get created by an attorney. And is your business held in that? Is your personal home held in that? Because, what we have in common in our industries is liability, and crazy things can happen, and it's fine to have liability insurance. But as we all know, if they settle on some lawsuit or something, the insurance companies now just turn around and come back after us. So having asset protection is so significant, even before the estate plan. And I would include in there too corporate structure, how your entity is set up, because so many people, they come here and their top problem in their mind is taxes, but it was simply, not only do they not have a good tax advisor, but they've got the wrong corporate structure. They're paying like the maximum tax they could actually be paying. And so, and there's actually a sixth piece to my deliverable, and that's a complete professional network that when, if somebody needs asset protection or tax planning, I have a full network that I refer them to after I provide the education. The next on the list is investing. Now, I don't, a lot of people think that Wealth Factory is managing money. I am not that. I'm not a money manager. I don't invest money for anybody. As a matter of fact, I advise all my clients to stay in cash. I think the market, in general, unless that's what you're passionate about and what you want to do in the middle of the night is study investing opportunities, it's your best investment is, first of all, invest in yourself and then invest in your business. That is where you're making most of your money. You're not going to get the return in the market that you get in your business. So it's just a progression, of all these things. And then we get into insurances. Like it's very rare for us to meet an entrepreneur that has all the insurance protection that they need, both personally and for their business. So we just take an inventory for everybody, educate them on it, and then just guide them in the direction that they feel called to go in.
Fantastic. I think that is a great overview of just some of the, um, again, obviously like the main points that you get into. And you said it also that you do a certain level of that, and then you continue to have resources and experts available as a client might need, depending on what avenue they go down. One of the conversations we had, you mentioned, I can't remember how the whole conversation went, but you mentioned that in this particular moment, you've already said, your numbers are down a little bit. You've got a more time to think about what to do. And you've mentioned that one of the things you've chosen to do is to improve on your product, which I'm curious, does that have an instant return? You have to wait for the market to come back, for the spending habits to come back, wait till later in 2025, as you mentioned. So how do you simplify and structure a product or a service that any of these entrepreneurs may have, looking forward to maybe the revenue, the return on that investment coming later? It reminds me, I think I mentioned to you this in one of our conversations, it reminded me of the book written by Chip something or other. He started Lululemon. Such a good book, I thought. And he talked about how their growth was so quick and so phenomenal, just to read and think about the research and development that they did, how they recruited their avatar, right, to create products that had never been created before. And they grew and grew and grew. And then 2008 hit. And they lost, or that growth stopped. But he mentioned how taking that time to put infrastructure into place saved their business. Had they kept growing at the same rate without having that infrastructure, of course, hindsight's 2020, but he said we would have never been able to continue. So growth is great, right? We all are looking for more money, more growth, more patients, more clients, whatever. But in this case, what he took that downturn to do was to input infrastructure. You mentioned improving your product. What other ideas even are there to do with this downtime, so to speak?
I am very surprised at how many small business owners I work with that, like, they know what they're doing, they know the product they sell, but they don't really know why they're successful. And so this goes back to, like, it is so easy for me to rattle off my 5 deliverables because that's where I started. So like we had a textbook, and people actually still do like written material that they can have in their hands and follow page by page with their coach. We started there. I completely had a team completely rewrite the book and how that education is going to be delivered. So anybody that was maybe a previous client of Wealth Factory, if they started again in 2025, it looks completely different.
Mm,
Then we went to work on the dashboard. I actually, during this time period, hired a person that you've gotten to know well, Megan Mountain, who actually started to help me walk through a better webinar sequence. And so we improved that during this time period. But that cost me money, and not only on the platform, but on hiring the person. Um, there, I made some adjustments with the coaches. I invested in training for them. So it's really all about understanding your business and looking at everything through the lens of here it is today. How can I make it better? Very much like our health and fitness. I know what I got today. How can I make that better for tomorrow?
I love that. And if I can add a little bit of domain knowledge input, like I just think about in simplicity and IV space, um, where you're looking at all these IV services. Our conversations, to be honest and transparent, really led to the topic for the next webinar on how to bring in ancillary services for your IV room, things you already have. So you look at an IV room and you're like, okay, what are the 10 IVs that I do? Some people have 30 different formulas. Some people have 2. And if you look into the numbers of that, you can figure out which of these make money, which of these do you have I always say you do have tendencies, you do have habits as providers of what you recommend, whether you think you do or not. So figure out what that habit is and simplify, get rid of all the other things that you don't talk about, that you don't sell, that maybe this formula is pretty close to this formula, and let's just make it one. So simplify and figure out like which 5 or 10 IVs do you have? And you can look at that from a health perspective and say, well, which one approaches infection? Which one approaches cellular health? Which one, maybe how many of these can we do that really have such a broad scope? You can't go wrong. One of the avenues I've taken is single ingredients, because as we talk about regulatory and stuff, it's like getting different ingredients, the cost of ingredients, mixing the ingredient. Like this is a challenge. So what if we went to single IV ingredients that that approach most every client that comes in from a cellular level? How do we stack those few IVs together to get the best outcomes, create this treatment plan, and make that presentation and delivery, whether it be in marketing, marketing in terms of, it could be online, it could be webinars, it could be whatever, make that just so simple and so well structured to understand, and then share the education side of it and the outcome side of it. That and then again for the webinar next week, it is like, and what else do you have in your office already? Look at all the other services and say, for the square footage, for the staffing, for my recommendations, what do I need to keep and what isn't serving me or my patients, and eliminate it. And don't be afraid to do that. Even if you spent $30,000 on the piece of equipment, if it's not doing anything for you and you don't think it will, then find a way to sell it. If it is and you want to incorporate, then let's figure out how to incorporate it, make it simple. But all these other things can come in and stack and layer with this one revenue source, like one IV room. And then you can really, again, I think of Alex Hormozy too, is just like simplify and leverage what you have, leverage the clients you have. And if it's not an IV room that's really your main center for you, then what is? And identify that, and then make it better, make it more simple, create a program around it, figure out how that emotionally, mentally is going to connect with your audience, get them into a conversation, and figure out why they do or they don't buy it.
Well, and that's, the principle of another great book, 10x is better than 2x. And everybody here would probably find, because it's been proven out in society that 20% of your effort is creating 80% of your revenue.
Yeah.
So, it makes you go, well, all that 80% of effort, what is that going to? And it's going to, the shiny pennies. And I had a time period of my life when I was investing in dental practices, and which I thought was a very simple business model till I got in there, and like Botox and weight loss and like it's like almost everything but dental was going on in there.
I remember you talking about those stories now, and you eventually got out of it because I mean, some people it might have been a good fit for, but your simple structure model of Norm Westervelt, you're just like, yeah, this is way, way more than I think it should be, or I want to get involved with. So it makes total sense. But I'm in the same category, and I even struggle with this at MedMasters, is just like, what is the need? What can you serve? What can you do to serve? And how do you make that really successful? And there's always opportunity. I think even in a downturn, there's always opportunity. It's just figuring out where to put that, where you're getting that 80% so you can focus on the 20%. And sometimes I think that's really hard because we live in a generation of FOMO. We live in a generation of um you just don't, especially right now, even the time frame of just you don't want to lose any revenue stream, even if it's small. But again, I think of Alex Hormozy is just like, but just if you could sell 10 items, or you could sell 10x of one item, and when you get really good at that, then maybe it's time to grow and expand beyond that. So lots of principles come to mind there. What else are we missing in the conversation, if anything? I mean, is there any other like just little tidbits you're learning about consumerism, about um, uh, liability? I mean, is there just anything else that hits you in terms of entrepreneurship?
I have learned, um, especially the last 10 years, that there is no such thing as an absentee owner. If you
Mm.
own the business, you're involved in it. Like it's a great notion to think you can go to the beach and let somebody else run your company for you. But it's like we tell our clients, I can't care any more about your personal finances than you do. And so I can't care any more about this wonderful business that I have than I care. And I get accused from time to time of micromanaging, but if I put somebody else in charge of that, I risk my business. So I would encourage every entrepreneur, get in the weeds, understand your business, hire good people that will allow you to spend more time away from it. But the more you understand about your business, then you'll have the ability, you'll create agility. And then all these things that you just listed, things like liability, all those things slowly melt away because you're totally ingrained and involved in your business.
Do you have a recommended structure system or software or outline that you would recommend? I mean, clearly you love some of this stuff. It's you called this all out initially that most of us probably don't love accounting. We wouldn't have become tax experts. That's for a certain select type of special person. But we have some that we use. We follow like an entrepreneurial operating system. There's some software called 90 OS. Like knowing your numbers and knowing your business takes a lot of structure and organization, um, not to mention just spending time in it. But do you have any of those things that you recommend to help people know their business better?
Um, well, there are programs out there, EOS is a great program. Um, the um, the challenge with the softwares and that kind of thing, it actually can create information overload. So, um, it's sort of like an exotic car that has all the bells and whistles that you can imagine. I'm interested in the speedometer, the gas gauge, and the audio system.
Reminds me of my phone. It like they all do more for us than we would ever imagine. And we
Right,
don't even know it.
right. Um, and I have found like my chief operating officer, who is outstanding. She was built on EOS, but even I have learned to sit down and say, do we need to track this? Do we need to track this? So it's all about finding the principles that resonate with you and then getting to the information, and it's the KPIs. There's only like five, that really move the needle for your business and my business. Let's focus on those.
Got it. Two other things come to mind if we could quickly do it. I know that you spend a lot of time in the space of helping entrepreneurs. You mentioned like stay in your business, but at some point you're going to expire. You're going to get to a point where it's not conducive. Or maybe I think for a lot of our audience, they might be like, I want to transition out of inpatient care and get into speaking or teaching or writing a book or like, and I think you and I both call it in some shape or form a legacy. Um, do you have any quick advice on that transition? Or I'm guessing it's the same basic stuff of knowing your business and cash and setting everything up correctly so that you can eventually sell your practice. You can eventually, again, somehow work your way out of it or grow it, maybe scaling it is their goal. Any just quick advice in that area? Maybe
The
it's a broad topic.
Well, so much of it has to do with how comfortable the business owner is. In my world, I am very clear on my why, and it has to do with my family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, but they're all on the other side of the country. So I just started a very, very intentional path that is now up to where half my time each month I actually spend out east with them. I'm still very involved with the business and I still do my calls, but I don't even think like I don't even think about selling the business because a lot of people sell their business because they're done with it. There is a way to actually have the business run. But I still mean what I said earlier. You cannot be an absentee business owner. You just have to find the right people and the right balance to have that level of involvement. And then if you're blessed with a buyer for your practice someday, great. But if you love it and it's providing great cash flow, it doesn't get much better than that.
Mm, great advice. Last thing, just on the topic of competition. I don't know how to present it per se, but it's a fact. It's a product of being in business. I know for a lot of our entrepreneurs, there's a lot of franchises and other types of competition coming in. So it might be competition again with like economics or whatever, but it also is just real legitimate competition. Do you have any, again, key points on just how to maintain competition factors, just criteria to do well in competition?
Um, as best as you can, and this is hard, as best as you can, try and ignore the competition.
Mm, I
They
love
they are, it's a terrible distraction, and especially too, if the competition has specifically put a target on your back, which some do. focus on what makes your practice different and better than anybody else's. And you don't have to name names. And and once you establish that, then and I always say too to my clients that have a little confidence issue, what got you here today was betting on yourself. That's what's going to make you successful in the future. So you had competitors the day you started your practice. It's just you didn't worry about it because you were just starting, you were the competitor. So as best you can, just try and ignore it, stay out of the mudslinging, and just focus on what you do best and make sure everybody in the world knows that.
Love it. Love it. That's like mic drop. I feel like this conversation has been so valuable, so holistic, right? Well-rounded in terms of lots of different avenues of business, foundation, growth, maybe oh, what is the term? I can't think of it right now, but just learning how to grow even though you can't move forward because there's certain elements at play. But it's been fantastic to highlight some of the services and expertise that you have and maybe even connect those dots for our clientele. So as Norm mentioned, we do have a relationship with Wealth Factory in that he has enabled several free resources for MedMasters clients and audience. So there is a link that if Vicky hasn't shared, she will, but you can go there and there's, I think, 6 free resources that you can get involved with, take advantage of. And if it suits you, if you already have a direct inclination to reach out to Wealth Factory and learn more, I know there's lots of free resources too. Like I am part of a weekly webinar. I get notifications automatically. I can join or not join, but depending on the time, I can listen to recordings, etc. So there's lots of ways to maybe get more involved in those 5 elements that Norm is so good with. But otherwise, we just really appreciate your insight, your expertise, your time, and really taking concern for our industry, and helping others get much better with their health. And hopefully we all take the advice both for business and for health so we can really create and grow strong companies that serve as many people as possible.
Well, if it wasn't for you all, I don't know how I'd get my B vitamins at all.
So are you doing any of the crazy stuff? You doing methylene blue? You doing NAD? One of the things I respect so much about you is you're your own educator. I feel like you really went to bat for yourself in terms of how to optimize hormones, transitioning into that later phase of life, all sorts of things. But we got a lot of peptide providers on here. We're big fans of peptides. And like you mentioned, there's so much changing in that environment all the time. We wrap our whole, worlds around one thing and then it changes. But what's your favorite health hack right now?
It actually is peptides.
Is it?
I'm getting on 2 particular ones that I'm getting very, very good results on.
Yeah, love it. We've messed around with so many of them. I say we, Lexi, Talon, I mean, we've got all sorts of crazy plots going with that stuff, but they've been a really fantastic change, I think, for optimization, for health, and even the general public that's really struggled with metabolic disease. So all
Yeah.
right, Norm, thank you so much.
Oh,
Appreciate you.
this was fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, please go to the link shared. It's you can find it at lookforthecause.com. That's our affiliate website. You have to scroll down to Wealth Factory. It is changing here in the next couple of weeks, but that'll take you to the landing page, Housed at Wealth Factory. And then you can get those free resources. All of his socials are at the bottom too, so you can connect and follow that way and subscribe to some of those webinars. But encourage you to do so. You won't regret it. All right, you all have a good night.